Just a reminder, you can catch me recording this podcast live on AMP. AMP is a new live radio app that lets you call in and chat with me in person while recording. Get the app on Apple's App Store and make sure you follow me at John Middlekauff to get notified when I go live. What is up, everybody? A lot of trades happening, craziness in the NFL. I have it all covered here, but first, 3 and Out Podcast. That's the name of the show with me, John Middlekauff. Go subscribe wherever you may listen. If you're watching this on YouTube, hammer that like button, subscribe to the page, leave a comment, and interact with us below. As you can see, I'm rocking a 3 and Out hat. If you go to thevolume.com, search the merch. We got you covered. Flex fit hats. We got trucker hats. We got you all covered, thevolume.com. Before we dive into football, I need to tell you about my favorite app in the phone. Grab your smartphone, go to your app store, download the Gametime app. They happen to be the official ticketing app of this podcast. And when you do, you go, God, I want to go to a football game this fall. College, pro, you name it, I got you covered. Sign up. They got interactive maps. You can find out exactly where you want to sit. Your first pair of tickets, use the promo code JOHN. That's my name, John. You get $20 off. So go to Gametime, search a pair of tickets. Oh, concert? You want to go to a concert? You want to take your son? You want to take your wife? You want to take your mom or your dad? I also got you covered. Sign up for a pair of tickets. Promo code John, $20 off. How do you beat that? These inflationary times, give a little discount. No big deal. I don't even need a thank you. Just download the app, Gametime, promo code John, $20 off. That's all the thank you I need. Enjoy yourself. Let's start with just football in general. The game is not that complicated. I was watching the Netflix documentary. Right now, not a lot of television shows out there. The writer's strike is really starting to kick in to our entertainment. And you lay in bed at 9 or 10 at night, you just want to watch a little TV before you unwind. Options are getting limited. So I flipped on the Florida Gators documentary. I'm not an Urban Meyer guy. Think he's kind of a scumbag. Don't even like Florida. And I saw a lot of criticism of the documentary online. Like, I'm not expecting guns, murder, sex, drugs, rock and roll, strippers, prostitutes, which obviously played a big role in his program, literally murder. But I was like, you know what? One of the best programs in my life for that stretch. I'll just watch it, take it for what it is. I get it's probably Urban Meyer propaganda. That's the only way they can get him to agree. He's basically telling it through his lens. Now, I've never disputed, for all his scummy tendencies, how good of a coach he was. College, no business in the league, elite college coach, elite. So I was like, I'll throw this on. And I think he represents something, right? If you hire Urban Meyer in college, you're going to win. If you hire Lincoln Riley, Nick Saban, Brian Kelly, you're going to win. The NFL is a little harder because in college, I can steal you from another program. If I'm LSU, I can go to Notre Dame and go, I'll offer you $100 million. If I'm USC, I can look the guy at Oklahoma and say, what's your number? In the pros, I can't. So the only way, if you're not a retread coach, and retread sounds negative. I mean, Andy Reid's on a second job. Bill Belichick's on a second job. But if you haven't had previous experience, I'm kind of guessing. I'm taking a projection a lot like a draft pick, right? When I hire Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, Mike Vrabel, I'm hoping it's much easier to hire a Pete Carroll or Andy Reid that have a resume. But that's not most coaches, right? Most coaches are not Sean Payton. Most coaches are Brian Daboll. And in football, in college, when I hire Nick Saban, when I hire Urban Meyer, when I hire Brian Kelly or Lincoln Riley, they have the quote-unquote GM position now in college football. But let's be real. The head coach on Saturdays is the GM and the head coach. In the pros, you got a true GM. You're paying another guy 7 figures as well. Now, these coaches are making between 10 and 15, Sean Payton, $18 million. GMs make a lot less, but they're still making 2 to 5. Like, they're making some coin. And they play an integral, important role in any franchise, regardless how much juice or non-juice they have. But the reality is the best franchises have a very, very close relationship between the head coach and the GM. And even if the head coach is the grand poobah, Pete Carroll, Andy Reid, they empower John Schneider, Brett Veach, and they have success. So when I look at the Giants, They were an embarrassment for a 4-year stretch. Shocked Pat Shurmur didn't work. Wait, you're going to hire a special teams coach from New England? Good luck. And it was even more of a disaster than anyone thought. But when they hired Brian Daboll, who fits the projection like a lot of coaches in recent history, right? Kyle, McVay, LaFleur, guys who have been coordinators, offensive guys that can influence the quarterback. You never know. I don't care who he's worked for. I don't care where he's been. And I don't care how good he's been as an assistant head coach, right? If we knew these guys were going to be good, they would have been hired way before they were hired. And they would have had way more people lined up trying to hire them. Like, Mike Vrabel's good. Well, of course he is. Look at him, right? Well, it wasn't that big of a no-brainer a couple years before he got hired, when he had to start just working for Urban Meyer as a college assistant and then go to Bill O'Brien as a position coach. It made sense, like team captain, Brady loved him, Belichick guy, tough guy, defensive mind, but he's been way better than anyone could have imagined. The Giants' success, and listen, I'm guilty of this too. Quarterback. Would Josh Allen have been Josh Allen if he would have gone to a shitty situation? If he wouldn't gone to a place that had a GM and a head coach, Sean McDermott and Brandon Beane, same vision, same ideas, same willingness to go through the mud and big picture, and a coordinator in Brian Daboll that knew what he was doing? Is Jimmy Garoppolo a $180 million career earning guy if he doesn't play for Belichick and Kyle Shanahan? Instead, he plays for Joe Judge and Todd Bowles. Your circumstances in football, especially at quarterback, dramatically influence your success. There are only so many Peyton Mannings that can overcome anybody. Look at Trevor Lawrence. Can't miss. Andrew Luck's probably the best example. He overcame incompetence. Trevor Lawrence, if Urban Meyer would have been his head coach for several years, again, good college coach, no business in the pros, it would have been ugly. Against Doug Peterson, NFL guy, Super Bowl champ, looks like the next star. So Daniel Jones, I had a lot of people when Daniel Jones was coming out. I remember thinking, like, they drafted him 6th overall. What are they doing? And my guys in the SEC were like, Middlekauff, I like this guy. I had a big grade on this guy. Well, Pat Shurmur, Joe Judge, 4 years later, is like, this guy stinks. Like, what a terrible pick. And then boom, Brian Daboll comes in and just makes him credible. Now, how good he's going to be, I don't know. But I'll never forget being in college, seeing Alex Smith. And you see it in this documentary. Urban Meyer got hired from Utah to go to Florida because of that Alex Smith year. Him and Dan Mullen, right? They were taking the country by storm with this spread offense and this athletic quarterback. And then he goes to Mike Nolan and Mike Singletary, and he's viewed as just an absolute embarrassment. Then Jim Harbaugh comes. Then he trades him to Andy Reid, and he becomes a really good player. The power of a good head coach and a GM that not only knows what he's doing, but is on the same page as your coach equals success in the NFL. It's hard to find. No one knows. There is no secret sauce. But once you get it, you're off to the races, and you're going to be good. Now, it doesn't guarantee you Super Bowls, right? The Bills may never win a Super Bowl, but they're going to consistently be good because they have a good head coach, they have a good general manager, and they're both on the same page. It's just really that simple. And I think the Giants, you saw today, they made a trade. One thing, whenever you get, organizational chaos and people get fired and new coaches come in, I remember being a pro scout. You're always evaluating that team extra hard, especially during training camp, because everyone's available because they don't care about any of these guys, especially former high picks. So Isaiah Simmons, and one of my friends in the league, who's probably the best scout I know, hated him. I remember him saying, like, this guy, top 10 pick, like I wouldn't have drafted this guy. Not that he had an undrafted free agent grade on the guy. He just said, if I was in charge, he would just be a guy I don't draft. And he's been proven right. And maybe the guy has no position, and maybe he just can't really find himself. But the Giants basically get to take a free flyer on a guy that clearly Arizona would have cut. Because anytime that you trade a 7th-round pick for a guy right before the big cut dates, tells you everything you know. One, no one else wanted him. And two, he was going to be released. They would have cut him. And the Giants a couple years ago could not have made this trade. They did not have the cohesion. They did not have the vision. They did not have the talent running their operation. Maybe I'm overstating it, but I really believe in these two guys. And when you have two guys that know what they're doing, you win. It's really that simple, right? Howie Roseman knows what he's doing. You've seen him with a good coach. They've won. Sirianni, proven to be a pretty good coach. They've won. Doug Peterson, proven to be a pretty good coach. They won. When you get a GM, and Howie's one of the rare like GMs that has more juice than the head coach, right? That's pretty rare in football. Like Les Snead does not have more juice than McVay. John Schneider does not have more juice than Pete Carroll. John Lynch does not have more juice than Kyle Shanahan. But those guys are empowered, and it's why they've had a resume of success together. And I'm telling you, I don't know. Maybe I don't think the Giants are going to be some 14-win team. I think they could have a similar record to last year and be a better team. I think they could be 9-8 or 10-7 and be just dramatically better on the eye test and just more talented. And I think the entire reason is because their head coach and their GM, they finally got it right. And I was thinking about this because the Trey Lance conversation has just been just a lot of draft talk, right? Missing on picks and how bad of a pick it was. And it's not arguable. It's one of the worst. It's legitimately the worst draft pick in franchise history, given the amount they traded for him. And he's obviously can't even be the backup going into year 3. And I haven't broken down every trade in NFL history. It'd have to be right up there as I think I can very confidently say a top 5 worst pick in NFL history, and definitely, one of the worst draft. It wasn't a draft day trade, but one of the worst draft trades ever. But in 2023, and really since the new CBA in 2011, missing on a draft pick is not killer. It is in the sense that I drafted this guy. I could have drafted that guy. That sucks. That can be a kick in the dick. Right? I could have drafted Mahomes. I could have drafted Josh Allen. I could have done this. But in terms of the actual pick, even if you miss, it does not sink the franchise. It doesn't derail you in terms of finances. Because I remember being in college, and when I first became a GA, like at Fresno State, like 07, 08, 09, and it was that stretch of like Jamarcus Russell, Matt Stafford, Sam Bradford. Ndamukong Suh wasn't the number 1 pick, but he was the number 2 pick. The amount of money these guys were getting paid, and remember, the salary cap was dramatically smaller. So when they were signing these $50, $60 million contracts, it was not with a $225 million salary cap. I don't know what the salary cap was in 2007, but my guess would be closer to 120 than it was 220. So the amount of money was crippling from a financial standpoint. I remember Jamarcus Russell held out into the season, and a big reason was Al Davis did not have the cash to pay the signing bonus. And now the money it's all monopoly money. Like ultimately Trey Lance is going to make $35 million from his contract, whether he never plays another snap in the NFL. He made out like a bandit. But that money to Jed York, kind of irrelevant. It's all monopoly money. I was just telling, I'm doing a big remodel for the house I bought. And I was telling the general contractor today, you know what's crazy about real estate and when you use a property to pay for another property? It kind of feels like monopoly money, right? Like the money I make doing a podcast, the money you make doing whatever you do, you feel like I earn that money. When you buy a property and it just appreciates, you don't have to actually do anything, especially when you live there. You're just like, well, I sold it for double what I bought it for. That's fucking easy money. That's why most people historically have said, buy real estate. Because it's just, if you do it right, you can make a lot of money and you don't have to do much besides just pay the note or have someone else pay the note for you. Well, it's kind of the same thing right now in the NFL. If I'm an owner this year and my team wins 2 games, or I'm an owner and my team wins 15 games, when the season ends, whenever the payment comes out for the media deal, which last year I think was almost $400 million. I think it was like $375 million. That money's the same. You get the same check from the league and the same amount of money. I think it's paid out throughout the season, whether you're good or bad, whether you suck or whether you win the Super Bowl. Like the money that the Chiefs got last year from the NFL was the same amount of money the Bears and the Houston Texans got. The same amount of cash. Now, you make more independently from suite sales and all that stuff, but I'm just saying the money that ultimately you have to pay your players, to pay really most of your bills, is all the same. So when you whiff on any pick or whatever, it used to be devastating because of the amount of money. It was way less money being made. It was all out of whack. Well, the new CBA and this rookie scale has kind of changed the game. So financially, you miss on Trey Lance, it would have been devastating if you didn't have a quarterback. 49ers have 2 guys that are better in Brock Purdy and Sam Darnold. But ultimately, the money, even if if they have to cut him, which I don't think they are inclined to do because, it accelerates. When you sign someone and you give them a signing bonus of $20 million, it's a 4-year contract. You amortize that over the length of the deal, and usually you backload it a little bit. And when I cut a guy before the deal is done, it accelerates forward to that year. So they would have a huge dead money, which I don't think they want to do. But even if they have to eat a little money and attach a pick to get rid of them, like, whatever, here's a 5th-round pick. We'll eat a couple $1 million, take this player. It's another thing, and you've seen it recently with some of these running backs, when you have an albatross number of a guy that people view can't play. Dalvin Cook can play. And not a soul in the NFL would trade for Dalvin Cook for $14 million. Because ultimately when he signed for less than half of that. When you look at the true guarantees, Zeke was making a ton, signed for $600,000 signing bonus. So the money in the NFL with the salary cap when it comes to draft picks isn't that crazy. Do you know what is crazy? If Russell Wilson stinks, what is killer for the Denver Broncos is not that they gave up a couple first-round picks. It just isn't. What's killer for them is that Russell Wilson's contract is enormous. It is massive. The amount of guaranteed money that they gave him that goes over the life of his contract, you can't get rid of that. You're stuck with that, especially the money through the signing bonus you give him. Same thing with Kyler Murray. So it becomes like if Russell Wilson right now, Sean Payton made him available, obviously it would be detrimental to their salary cap, but it would be basically impossible to trade him because people question how good he is. And his number is so massive. It is very, very big. And the guaranteed money makes things very, very complicated. So when you miss on draft picks, which all general managers do, the only problem is who you could have taken in that spot, right? The reason Howie Roseman regretted Jalen Reagor, not because he was paying him much money, because he could have taken Justin Jefferson. Now, he made up for it a couple years later when he gets A.J. Brown, but it wasn't because he owed Jalen Reagor a lot of money. He didn't. When you're the 20th pick, I mean, what did he get guaranteed? Like $5-6 million? Contract is nothing. That's like what Justin Tucker makes to kick. So I think the NFL, what makes it such a fascinating league, is it's the biggest business of all the pro sports, at least in this country. I know European soccer is massive, obviously. Just look at what Messi's doing. I mean, I'm not the biggest soccer guy, though I do respect, obviously the World Cup with the European countries. You can't convince, I can't take the MLS seriously. This is not in his prime Messi. This is an older Messi that felt like, a little bit of a cash grab, get some Apple stock, get some equity in the deal. It's like he's not even breaking a sweat. Remember, I'm not the biggest tennis guy, but I like Federer, Nadal, Djokovic, watching those guys play. Federer never sweated. And it always felt like, God, look how easy he makes this. The guy doesn't even sweat. It's like Kawhi Leonard. They just don't even sweat. When you don't sweat, I don't care how hard you're working, it doesn't look like you're working that hard. And when you're kicking someone's ass, like, God, this guy's making it look easy. Messi is making a fucking mockery of soccer in America. It's like he just kind of spins around some guys, kicks it through his legs, boom, kicks it from like 75 feet out, loops it around the goalie every single time. It's like some of his goals look like something you would see on video games. He's always done that, but it felt a little harder at the highest level. This is a joke. And I don't really know. I guess the ultimate point is the business of the NFL, from the owner standpoint, from the player standpoint, it's really fascinating. And it's what makes complicated. Like Chris Jones and Nick Bosa are elite players. No one would argue that. Whether you're pro management, pro team, anti-certain players, like that's a universally accepted opinion. It's not an opinion. You have to be, there's no subjectivity on their talent. They are elite. But where it does get complicated is like, how much you want? Like if you did have a major injury, which can happen, we're giving you $125 million guaranteed. Like it's basically a quarterback contract. We're stuck with you minimum for like 4 years. So these contracts get very complicated. When you draft guys high, whatever.